You've heard of the boy who cried wolf? Well, now it's the Wolves who are the ones that are actually doing the crying and in absolutely absurd ways. I'm Trevor Lane. This is the Basketball Bulletin. Make sure you subscribe right here to the channel right now. About 70% of you out there watching this are not subscribed. Hit that subscribe button. Let's fix that. It's free. All right, let's talk a little bit about this Wolves Warriors series. Steph Curry, unfortunately, out for a week. Donnie Freeman. Donnie, what do you think about that? Does that swing the series in your mind? Is it all Wolves from here on out with Steph Curry out for at least a week?
How many games is that? A few games?
That will be all the way through game 5 of the series.
Oh,
yeah,
man. Yeah, it was like I thought it was a few games there. I mean, I'd expect the Wolves to come out with more urgency, obviously. But yeah, if Steph is going to miss those games, and if the Wolves, play anything like they did in the first round at all, like even close, aside from the last game, then yeah, I would think that would skew more their way.
The Wolves have shot over the last 2 games an NBA record low in 3-point percentage for the playoffs. So you would have to think regression is going to kick in at some point for them. But the Wolves say it's not just that we shot poorly, or as Dante DiVincenzo, and I quote, says, we played like shit.
Don't cuss?
What? I do now, damn it. He said, we need to respond on Thursday. Yeah, if the Wolves do that, then the Warriors could be in a bit of trouble. They have played well without Steph Curry, though. Jimmy Butler obviously stepping up. But here is what Chris Finch had to say that is really interesting about the Warriors and how they're playing, and it's an interesting complaint here.
There was a play last night where Podziemski clearly grabbed him, and then he sheds Podziemski, and then he gets the foul. So, yeah, I mean, we'll certainly try to take justice into our own hands whenever we can. I think it's the nature of physical sport. But by the same token, my God, you should see some of these clips. They're just like, it looks like pulling guards and linemen out there just taking shots.
He said like linemen?
He said, yeah, like linemen. I'll tell you this. The Kingpin is not going to be happy because it sure sounds like Chris Finch is saying the Wolves are going to become vigilantes. They're going to take justice into their own hands and play more physical because they felt like the Warriors were fouling them a bunch in game 1. Donnie, on one hand, I think this has got to be a mindset for the Wolves, but the only reason to put this out publicly is to make sure the officials know as well, to keep an eye on the Warriors. This is just the mental games that are played through the media during the playoffs. Are you surprised, though, that this is coming out? You lose no stuff for Golden State. The Wolves still find a way to drop game 1, and now they're crying about the officiating.
Yeah, not surprised in particular because, like you said, this is normal. This is typically how it goes. In the playoffs, they're going to try to get any edge that they can, and that's the way that teams typically operate. So expected there. In terms of like the Wolves, I think they're in a interesting spot with all of that because they're clearly the bigger team, all that stuff, all that. But the Warriors are extremely scrappy, and then they've got a guy like Draymond who takes it a little bit further. So
yeah, scrappy is not the word for Draymond.
That's not the word I used to describe him. No. But so like the Wolves have to kind of meet that physicality there. And it's one of those things too, when you have a guy like a Draymond who, quite frankly, the officials let get away with a lot of different things because he's got that reputation.
Ridiculous.
Like he has a new highlight every other night, it looks like.
Yeah.
They let him kind of get away with a lot of stuff. So if you're the team against Draymond, you kind of just have to roll with the punches because if you try to meet him specifically, you're not going to get the same leeway.
Well, and you could see the physicality of the Warriors in the box score. I mean, 18 offensive rebounds, 7 for Jimmy.
Awesome.
Yeah, that was insane. And 0 for Draymond, but we all know Draymond does shady stuff. Should probably be ejected way more than he actually is. But 18 offensive rebounds for the Warriors. Look, they're the more physical team. But here's the thing, Donnie, they're the smaller team. So guess what? And look, I'm not a Warriors fan. I'm not a Wolves fan either. But if you're the smaller team, you have to muck things up. You have to be more physical. You have to be more aggressive. You have to be all of those things in order to try to mitigate the size advantage that the Wolves have. So on one hand, you say, the Wolves, this is what they normally do, is you're going to cry about the officiating to try to shine more of a light on it. But this is also what we expected strategically from Golden State. I also think it's interesting that the Wolves started the series in round 1 against the Lakers before the season even began, talking about the officiating and talking about how they were going to have to beat Wolves fans. We're talking about how they're going to have to beat both the Lakers and the referees and all this kind of stuff. It's interesting front runner behavior, I think, from the Minnesota Timberwolves, where they want to have these excuses in case they lose, but they want to be howling whenever they do win and feeling strong. So here we go again. And check this out too. That was not the only thing. Chris Finch, they've complained to the NBA. They've sent clips to the league.
Thought that was pretty clear.
Yeah, on the Warriors fouling Gobert. He said they look like pulling linemen with the shots. He said they do fouling, shoving, holding, pushing, and tackling Rudy. We've sent a bunch of clips to those leagues. Tackling Rudy makes me think of the movie Rudy.
No, did you know what it makes me think of is that clip from what was it last year where Draymond runs in and gets him in a headlock and drags him. He drags him a cool 6 to 10 feet headlock. Like
that was, I mean, we talk about all the absurd stuff that Draymond Green gets away with. I mean, it is completely ridiculous and unnecessary. Here it is. Take a look. I mean, that's insane.
He runs up out of nowhere, grabs him in the headlock, and he's dragging him. And Rudy's like trying to tap out.
Rudy's tapping out. He's like, I've got no air. My God, this is MMA here.
Well, Draymond learned the difference between getting a tech and a flagrant. So that's kind of where it is, too. He can he's like, okay, all right, now I'm going to yell in your face. You're going to give me a tech, but you're not going to give me a double tech and throw me out. I'm just going to flagrant this guy.
Oh, that's it, right? He's actually getting up there in flagrant points, though, too. Yeah, that could become an issue. But Chris Finch saying that he doesn't think another player with Rudy's pedigree is allowed to be physically beaten on the way that he is. I mean, I would disagree. I'm sure Nikola Jokic disagrees with that after the comments from the other day. Thunder fans that were chanting free throw merchant at him. We, of course, covered LeBron James over the course of the season. He gets hammered, gets a terrible whistle. So they're big. I think he's, it's a little bit hyperbolic here, but the big question is, will this work? Will the officials call things more in favor of the Wolves in game 2? And the Wolves, frankly, needed to, because I think with Steph out, projecting Steph could be back for game 6. There's a 3-day break between game 5 and game 6. I think the Wolves need to take advantage here. And you need to potentially try to end the series in the next 5. Obviously, the Warriors, I don't expect them to get gentlemen swept from here on out. No. But if you're the Wolves, I don't want any part of Steph possibly coming back for game 6. I want to get this thing done in games 2 through 5.
Yeah, I do wonder about that. If it's looking like they're on the verge of, winning all those games, if Steph maybe tries to rush back or what it looks like. But I think the Warriors, I think they may be in a okay spot anyway, though, because that's where Jimmy has to take it up to the next level, and he's capable of doing so. Like, Jimmy is capable of winning you a playoff game. He can do it. He's done it before.
And this is part of the benefit of trading for Jimmy. But look at this number, Donnie, plus 12.8 with Jimmy on and Steph Curry off for the Golden State Warriors.
The lineups have been great. They have, I believe, the best defense in the NBA since the Jimmy trade as well. Now, obviously, we're into the playoffs, so things kind of reset, but they get it done on both sides. And they get to the line a good bit with Jimmy out there. Like, I still think this will be a tough matchup regardless, for the Wolves to win.
Right. Now, I do think the one thing that was critical was the Wolves are already talking about this. McDaniels was talking about this. In fact, said essentially what they need to do now is they're going to take their protocols for Steph and they're going to transfer that over to Buddy Hield. And they're going to make sure that Buddy Hield does get, because that's how a big part of how the Warriors won the game was Buddy Hield got going and suddenly he's dropping 5 of 8 from 3. He had some big buckets too in the fourth quarter. So now the Wolves are saying we're going to take our defensive attention that we would pay to Steph. We're going to transfer some of that to Buddy Hield. That's kind of the domino effect here, right? I probably less open looks for Hield, less open looks for Pods, because you don't have the gravity of Steph Curry out there. Now, Jimmy Butler could still will you to a victory. He may get 20 free throws in the next game. You never know with Jimmy Butler. But I think where the domino effect is, where beyond just Steph's ability to blow up and go for 40 on any given night, life is now going to be more difficult on Hield, on Podziemski, especially now that the Wolves have a day to game plan for a Steph-less Golden State Warriors. Last game, the whole game plan was probably Steph Curry, and then suddenly he's gone, and you have to adapt on the fly. Now they've got time. What do the Warriors do without Steph? And the Wolves defense can game plan specifically for that.
Yeah, like Buddy is on one of those heaters again where he goes up and down, up and down. But
Yeah.
that's just some of that's just because the variance of 3-point shooting. But right now, Buddy's got 57 points in the last 2 games for them on 14 of 19 3-point shooting in those last couple of games. Like they absolutely need to lock in on him. I've talked about in the past how the Warriors don't really have a ton of shooting. It's mostly just Steph. I forgot to mention Buddy as well, of course, but really what it is I wonder now with Steph out and that attention going to Buddy, so there's not that release valve right there. Where are those other shot attempts going to come from? That's the question. Because I mean, look at their bench, for example. They're not getting those 3-point shots. So I think the Warriors are going to have to muck the game up from here even more than they already were, which is terrifying with Draymond. I don't even want to say it with Draymond, but jokes aside, Draymond's been pretty good in these playoffs, of course, and he was really, really good in this game for them too. But
Donnie, that's what pisses me off even more.
Yeah, he doesn't need to do all the antics.
Good. You don't need to do. You don't need to karate chop Fred VanVleet's neck. Like, what are we doing?
He doesn't
here?
need to do all that.
He did the Hogan leg drop to Tari Eason's head the other day. Like, come on, Draymond. Yeah. It's absurd.
Yeah, he doesn't have to do all that. I agree. Because he's good enough. But yeah, I think they're gonna have to muck it up a little bit more. And I think that 3-point shooting, like if Buddy has an off game, because I mean he quite literally is due for one. But if he has an off game, that could matter a lot. And if Jimmy's not going to give you 40 points or 35 points, it's going to be a really tough game. Another piece of this too is I expect the Wolves, to bounce back. The Wolves have been historically bad, like you said, the last couple of games. I wouldn't expect that trend to continue. No. Right in the next game, and I expect them again not to want to go down 0-2. So they're gonna. I think it's a pretty safe bet the Wolves win the next game, and then that's where things get a little bit hairy because if you're Golden State going to Minnesota. Right, I think that's tricky. It's 6-7 right now, right? So they're
in Minnesota. Yeah,
they're in Minnesota.
So they're in Minnesota.
Actually, never mind. Then I got it backwards because I'm not used to seeing 2 lower seeded teams advance. But yeah, never mind. Then you have
right now. It's all of the road teams have won in round 2 as we're recording this.
Hey, you have a chance to really steal momentum here.
I think they've already stolen home court, but we'll see.
They have a chance.
At
home?
Can they stay afloat without Steph Curry? That's the big question. Yeah. But the number 4 team in 3-point percentage on the season, to me, that tells me if we get a long enough sample size, at some point regression will kick in. The Wolves are simply not a 15% from 3 team. They're much better than that. Now, playoff basketball is different. The intensity ramps up. You have to give credit to the Warriors defense, all of that. But you'd have to think there is some positive regression coming to Minnesota. Could they continue to shoot poorly? Could nerves get to them? Could the playoff environment be a problem? Sure, it certainly could. It's not like if this were just the middle of January and we say, they're just going to bounce back. But the bottom line is they still should see improvement off of the last couple of games, 3-point percentage.
Yeah, but my only thing about that is I didn't think that they were as good as they showed in that first round either, 3-point shooting. So what is
in game 5?
Well, game 5 hit them like a ton of bricks, but they still won that game. So whatever. But I didn't think they were as good as they showed in the first 4 games, right? Especially some of their,
Julius Randle
guys like Julius, like he specifically, I think, is such a swing piece for them because if his shot is going and if he's getting those touch fouls, like you're not going to beat this team. So I think that's the big piece of it too. But I do wonder if that is just kind of their 3-point shooting normalizing. Them coming down the last couple of games to make up for those first few games being blistering hot.
And Lakers fans would say, but of course, right? But I mean, look, suddenly Julius Randle and Jaden McDaniels, who I don't think missed a shot in game 1, of round 1.
1-3
not literally. They did, but I mean, very few. I think McDaniels was 3 for 3 from deep. They were 0 for 6 combined. Anthony Edwards from deep. Anthony Edwards 1 for 5. 0 for 2 from Mike Conley. He's a better shooter than that. DiVincenzo 1 for 7. That's not going to continue. That's just not. Those guys are too good at shooting to continue that forever. Yeah. That's not going to happen.
But if they were playing normal, are they going to 10 for 29? Now that wins them this game. But I'm not expecting them to go 15 for 29.
No, but 10 for 29 is enough to win. Yeah. You just have to be. If they were average from 3 in this last game, they win. And that's I think what is probably going to happen here. But we'll see. No Steph Curry. Difficult spot to be in for the Golden State Warriors. But the Wolves, leaving nothing to chance, saying, "Oh no, just no Steph is not enough. We need to complain to the league about the officiating. We need to get them off of Rudy. We need to make sure the Warriors are getting called for these fouls." We know the Warriors get away with a ton of moving screens. We'll keep an eye in game 2 on the paint and see how much holding, grabbing, shoving, all that kind of stuff the Warriors get away with in that one. But give us your thoughts.
Hold on, before you end it, I gotta say one thing. I shout out to John Krasinski. You showed his tweets earlier. I loved him in Multiverse of Madness. All right, guys, that's all.
Come on. He wasn't. How did the smartest man on earth become the dumbest man on earth? With one word from Black Bolt's mouth, blah, blah, blah. Why would you tell her that? Sorry, we've gone into MCU stuff here. Made no sense. All right, everybody.
That was a joke on the actor name.
I know. It was good.
It was
good. Also, I think an underrated movie. Multiverse Madness. All right, everybody. Before we go off into uncharted territory, make sure you subscribe right here to the channel. Till next time, see you and stay safe.